Vermont State Parks Accounting, Deposits. Throughout the season, you will have need to go to the bank to deposit park revenue, both cash and checks, on a regular basis. Here we are going to discuss some of the best practices as well as some things to keep in mind when making your deposits. Best practices for deposits. The first thing I want to mention is that night deposits are always an option. For most locations, night deposits have already been set up for you at your primary banking location. If you do have any questions about making night deposits, you can feel free to reach out to the business office. Deposits should only be created in Aspira the same day that you physically go to the bank. This is important because it will help the business office when reconciling bank activity with park activity. Deposits should be made weekly at a minimum, and if you reach the deposit threshold, it's expected that you will be making deposits more frequently. So what is this deposit threshold? Why do we have it? The deposit threshold is $1,000. What this means is that anytime you reach $1,000 in cash and checks in the contact station, it's expected that you will be making a deposit as soon as is practical. It is understood that it may not always be possible to go to the bank as soon as you reach that threshold. So we simply expect that when you reach that threshold, you will be going when you have the opportunity, whether that's later in the day when things slow down or even if it's a night deposit. I do know for a fact that some parks will reach this deposit threshold multiple times during the day at certain points during the season. If this applies to you, please note that we do not expect you to make multiple trips to the bank in one day. Simply take that $1,000 or take that revenue, put it in your safe, and get to the bank as soon as possible. The reason we have this deposit threshold is to protect both our staff and protect Vermont State Parks. Having that threshold protects us against theft and reduces the risk of loss. It also helps us to locate errors and discrepancies both in Aspira as well as in the bank records. Preparing and making your deposit. After you reach the deposit threshold, when you are preparing to go to the bank, you will need to complete a deposit ticket. On this deposit ticket, you're going to make sure that you include the total amount of cash and itemize any checks that you've received. In addition to that, you're going to want to put the total at the bottom, and you're going to want to fill out the deposit date at the top. The deposit date should always be the date that the deposit was actually taken to the bank. This deposit date should also match the date that the deposit was created in Aspira. You'll want to ensure that these are completed legibly, as they do get used by the business office to reconcile cash and checks separately. All of your deposit books should have duplicated deposit slips. The top copy, which is usually white, goes to the bank with your cash and checks. The second copy, which is usually yellow and sometimes maybe pink, will need to be validated and scanned to be dropped into Teams so that the business office can review. Over here, you'll see a copy of the validation that has been printed on the back of a deposit ticket. And below here, this is a copy of a validation receipt. Some banks may provide a copy of a validation receipt instead of validating the back of the deposit ticket. What this validation is simply a series of numbers and information that helps the business office locate the deposit within online banking. It will include the total as well as the date, along with a few other identifiers. What happens if I'm at the bank and the bank teller indicates a different amount than I totaled up on my deposit ticket? When that happens, don't panic. Simply have the teller recount one more time. It's possible that you miscounted some change, and it's also possible that you left a $20 bill underneath the drawer in the contact station. You can deposit what you have and just note on the validation receipt that you receive that it was a different amount than you had counted on your deposit ticket. It is important to do this because when you scan and drop the deposit back up into Teams, I will be looking for any variances and discrepancies so that I can validate those with the online banking system. If you get back to the park and happen to find that some money was left in the safe or perhaps left under the drawer in the contact station, simply make a note and deposit those funds with your next deposit. There are a few final notes that I'd like to just mention quickly. When you have gone to the bank and scanned your deposit paperwork, it's important that your deposit ticket as well as your validation receipt are scanned on one document. This document should be saved by the tracking number. That is, the file name should match the tracking number that has been entered into Aspira. In the case of this example on the screen, you will see that the deposit ID and tracking number is circled here. It is 6130-530-535. Prior to dropping this document into Teams, I will save it as a PDF with the file name of 6130-530-535. Again, this file name matches the tracking number that is entered into Aspira when you create the deposit. Over here, just as a reminder, you will have your Park Team channel. You'll click on Files at the top, and you can just drag and drop that file into Teams once it is all set. If you do have any notes, you can use the chat feature in Teams to let me know, or you can reach out to me via email.